All right, so you are here this evening to talk about the functional language planning expert intensive. And as I was just telling Wendy, our next summer session begins June 2nd and runs through August 23rd. We'll talk a little bit more about what that schedule looks like in a few minutes, but we are still open for registrations. We're about half full right now. And we'll take registrations up until we reach our max or until June 2nd, whichever comes first. We'll get into the dates and all of that. What I wanted to do this evening was give you a little presentation about what the intensive is about, let you hear from a couple teachers in schools, one who's done quite a bit of work in the area of functional language planning, and three who participated in, or two who participated in the spring session, sharing a little bit about some of the work they did and the coaching they received. So this program was developed for these audiences, for ELD teachers, ESL teachers, whatever we're calling EML teachers. We have lots of different names, but for those who are hired as part of the English Language Development Program, CLD teachers in Colorado. Right? If your main role is to provide English language development instruction, then it's a program for you. If you're a school leader or an ELD program leader, a school principal, a district curriculum leader who wants to know more about about language development and how we can make this happen on a more consistent basis in the school, you're in the right place. And if you are a content or grade level teacher who wants to know more about helping your multilingual students to develop their language, then you are in the right place. So Wendy, you told me what school you're in. What is your role in that school?
Sure. I'm an ELD teacher with fourth and fifth grade.
Okay. All right, great. And Sarah, how about you? What do you do for Wacomico County? My Eastern Shore friends.
I am currently a kindergarten teacher I'm interested in becoming an EL teacher. So I'd like to see how I can incorporate that language development.
Excellent, excellent. Well, having this program in your pocket would be great for the resume. I think we scared Hasita away. I'm sorry. I don't think she wanted to talk. All right. Well, thank you all for sharing. I am from Maryland. I spent all but 2 years of my 25 public school years in Maryland, in Prince George's, Montgomery, and Anne Arundel. Right now I live in Virginia, but I'm still in Maryland all the time, doing coaching and things like that. So I can speak pretty well to the Maryland expectations, know the different content coordinators, so I could answer lots of questions for you. So what I want to share with you tonight is an overview about the research base for the program. We won't go deep into research, but I want you to know that there is a very, very strong research base behind functional language planning, and also a lot of years of experience and a lot of years of me trying to figure it out and being connected with the right people and the right experts at the right time who helped me learn how to explain things better, how to get teachers to understand language development more. And so it's a combination of research and experience that brought this program together, and mostly a lot of requests made by teachers and by principals and by district leaders saying, like, we are struggling to figure out how to make language development work with all these new curriculum products and a lot of things being very scripted. And so we spent some time putting together what exactly would the best program look like in these situations, which is nationwide. We're seeing this kind of switch to more scripted curriculum and push in nationwide. So what do you think, you can speak on the microphone or put in the chat, what do you think is keeping your ELD program from being highly effective or your students from becoming proficient more quickly? Or do you think you have the utmost efficient ELD program? What challenges are you seeing right now? Wendy says insufficient oral practice and pace of the general education curriculum, right? We move quickly, we have a lot to cover and a lot of in-depth topics that the curriculum are covering these days. And the biggest piece I see, and the one that I first talk to with every school that I work with, is that idea of insufficient oral practice, right? Lack of opportunity for student-to-student interaction. Lots and lots of teacher talk and not a lot of student talk. And while the teachers, you all need to talk so students can learn, they also learn so much from each other. And you really cannot learn a language unless you practice that language. And that means we have to give students more time speaking about our topics, talking about what's in the curriculum, working things out with each other. And so that in itself is a major focus of this program, is looking at the big picture and finding those opportunities and where we can fit it in, among many other things. But that you've brought up what many people have brought up. So here are some of the big messages that I hear going school to school, district to district, right? There's limited planning time to align the language and the content, right? We're struggling enough to learn new curriculum and figure out all the expectations of the content areas, right? Language arts, math, science, social studies, everything. And then on top of that, trying to figure out, if you're the ELD teacher, how to align language development with multiple grade levels. I know Wendy said she's 4 and 5. So there's 2 different curriculum you're trying to do. So, and that time to co-plan is hard to come by, or get time with your content area teacher, or for your kindergarten teacher, Sarah, to get in conversations, collaborative planning with the ELD teacher. Okay. Everyone is working hard. Everyone is doing everything they know to do. Everyone's trying to figure out what the right thing is. But even with that support, I'm hearing a lot from schools about the data showing something else, or the data being defeating. When it comes to English proficiency scores, I'm hearing a lot about stagnant scores, or beginners who are staying stuck at that level 1 and 2 for much longer than anticipated. And I do think that is definitely part of that insufficient oral practice, or that time for student talk not being part of the built-in curriculum, that our students' language is not developing. The test scores are showing it. And on top of that, our literacy data is showing the effects of that as well. If we don't build the language, especially the oral language, it's really hard to build literacy, because oral language is the foundation for that literacy. So we're finding many of our multilingual students stuck in their literacy level as well. Or I've heard from so many people that, you know, we have up to a teacher in our first cohort who taught middle school who's still working on letters and sounds and things like that. Like the development is going slower than what we're used to, and we have to figure out why. When it comes to the ELD teacher and the content teacher, there's a lot of, like I said, because we don't have a lot of time to co-plan, there's a lot of unknown. As the ELD teacher, I don't know everything that grade level curriculum is asking for. I get bits and pieces. As the grade level teacher, I don't know exactly what the ELD teacher is supposed to be doing, or should be doing, or could be doing, because that's not my expertise. And so we're often doing the best we can with what we know. So teachers might be saying, hey, can you front load this vocabulary, or can you help finish an assignment, or can you continue to work on the letters and the sounds? And how do we know what is the best thing to do with the time that we have? Right? There's a lot of choices of what they need work on. Okay? And we just want to build our expertise, to think about maybe career changes, role changes, like you were saying, and to feel valued, respected, feel the student success that excites them and us, and to spend less time planning, right? To integrate more of language and content and do it in less time, right? That is a lofty goal. But after, as I was saying, a lot of years of researching and talking to experts that I respect in the field and really trying things out, lots of trial and error, it's boiled down to this, that becoming a functional language planning expert is the transformation you need to feel successful and in control of that language growth and success in academics. And it really is a transformation of the way you look at planning, the way you look at content area curriculum, the way you think about what's most important for students. And so let's talk that through just a little bit. When I say a transformation, typically in ESL programs, English language development programs, over the years, we have focused curriculum writing, lesson planning on a psycholinguistic approach. So a psycholinguistic approach is aligned more to a scope and sequence, where we say, we think about how the brain learns language. So that's the psycho, and then is the brain, linguistic is the language. And with the idea that we learn language in a specific order. So if you have, your beginners, these are things I always do with my beginning English speakers. These are things I do with my intermediate students. If you're in secondary and you have class periods, my ESL 1 class, this is our scope and sequence. We teach present tense verbs, then we teach past verbs, then we teach future verbs or whatever. Now we teach nouns, then we teach adjectives, then we teach putting them together. It's these very isolated skills that fall into a scope and sequence. And then the curriculum is often kind of artificial because you're trying to set up reasons to use past tense today or present progressive or something like that. And so having this kind of sequence in your mind of how the language should happen is really in conflict with the way that grade level content area curriculums are written. Because the curriculum, especially language arts, which is where ELD tends to push in most often, but even math curriculum, there's still context, right? They're teaching language arts standards through contexts, like, recent classrooms I've been in, through the Revolutionary War, through the colonial times, through settlement, through all these different themes and ideas and contexts. So this very stringent, first teach this, in the language scope and sequence, it just keeps butting heads. And you're trying to figure out how to fit it in, and it's not matching because it's realistically not matching. And so it's unrealistic with how curriculum is written and with the expectation more and more schools are going to, that we need to be pushing in and being in the classroom with the content teachers. So in thinking that how I really started thinking about this when I was in my last school district in Anne Arundel County, Maryland. And I was the ELD coordinator, and we had to write curriculum, right? Every so many years, you were given funds to revise, rewrite, redo your content area curriculum. And so we were trying to write curriculum and figure out that whatever we wrote we would write one piece of curriculum aligned to something in language arts. And then the next year, there was a new language arts curriculum. So then we had to start all over again, and we had to start all over again, like 3 times in the time that I was in the district. And I know I'm not alone in that. So whenever something changes, then there's this chain reaction. And I thought there's got to be a better way to do this. There's got to be a way to be a little bit more general and be able to fit and flow with the changes that happen around me instead of being a constant state of reaction. And with that problem in front of me or challenge in front of me, I had started working with the WIDA Consortium doing some training, and I got to meet lots of experts. And that's when I met Dr. Ruslana Westerland, and she was like, "You're doing it all wrong, Kelly. You need to look at systemic functional linguistics, look at sociolinguistics, research systemic functional linguistics." And she sent me on my way. And I am forever grateful for that day, because the sociolinguistic approach, which systemic functional linguistics is part of, isn't as much about first we learn this, then we learn this, about the sequence of learning language. It follows the idea that we learn language when we have a reason to use it, right? When we're motivated to communicate and to make meaning, when we want to understand something, when we have something we want to talk about, read about, write about, that's when we're learning language. And we learn the language that we need, right? It's more of a utility kind of approach. So we learn what we need to represent ideas, create meaning, engage in discourse and conversation. And while the first reaction when we talk about switching to a sociolinguistic approach is that it makes total sense that we learn the language we need to communicate, which is what you would do if you moved to another country. But how on earth do you know what that is, when it is, what are all the pieces, what are the things I'm supposed to be teaching if it's reactive, right? Then I'm always flying by the seat of my pants, because I may not know what they're going to need tomorrow. But there are ways that we can take away that fly by the seat of your pants feeling that's happening in our programs now, because we're trying to figure out new curriculum. The main focus in a functional language approach is to help students engage in the learning and participate, right? To engage, to be part of the group, to understand what's happening in the classroom. Excuse me. And to participate, to talk about it, to present their ideas, to share their knowledge, right? They have lots of background knowledge to share. And it requires a lot of authentic and supported learning opportunities. And so what kind of support is that? What's it look like? What does that look like for a beginning English learner, intermediate, advanced English learner? Right, so we're going to keep talking about that transformation. We're moving from the old scope and sequence to a more buffet kind of program, I would say. Right, there's a whole buffet of language out there. How do we know what to pick from the buffet depending on what is presented to us, and give us the option to select from a buffet? So I want you to hear from me. I want to make sure you can hear the video when it plays. All right. I want you to hear from Amber, and she will introduce herself and tell you who she is, and just give you a little bit of the in the school everyday perspective with systemic functional linguistics.
I'm a multilingual instructional coach in the York County School District in Colorado. I work with teachers from kindergarten all the way up to high school. In my role, I support
I apologize, I clicked something.
ELD teachers, classroom teachers, and also other instructional coaches to plan for and teach language development in their content areas. We work with our English language learners as well as Spanish language learners in our dual language program. Systemic functional linguistics, or SFL, is how I approach my coaching and my teaching. I use it to support teachers to unpack the language of the content areas and also to plan for language development. So for example, thinking about how does a math teacher teach students to read a data table in math, or even how could a ceramics teacher teach ELLs to use descriptive adjectives when planning to create a mosaic. Using SFL in the teaching and learning cycle for planning units, assessments, and delivering instruction makes the content and language come alive and truly be seen. So to quote Pauline Gibbons, SFL helps teachers hold language up to the light and look at it rather than through it. This approach to language development truly makes every teacher a teacher of the language. In my own practice as an ELD teacher, SFL helped me to set high expectations for my students, and it helped me get them there. I knew early on in my career that just teaching students parts of speech or how to ask questions would not make them successful with the language. They needed to understand how English and Spanish works to create meaning and be understood by their peers and teachers. To put it plainly, using the teaching learning cycle with SFL made my backwards planning stronger and my instruction more engaging. So I seriously hope that you sign up for this course with Kelly Ryder to make teaching the language of your content visible and also fun.
All right, that's Amber joining us there.
Hello.
Oop. And so when we think about this functional language approach, Amber touched on some of it, of being able to do the backward mapping. Backward mapping and planning is not a new concept, been around for a long time. Most of us are used to working in that way when we have collaborative planning, where we look at the assessments, we look at the activities, look at the standards, what do students need to know and be able to do by the end of this, then break that down and pace it out into the lessons. A lot of our current curriculum guides do a lot of that for us, but we still need to be able to backward plan from the standard and the assessment to know what is most important in this unit, because as you said earlier, right, they move quickly and there's a lot in there. And so we need to be able to pick and choose and prioritize at times. So one thing we're running into when it comes to the literacy development and language development is that we're looking at that and doing the backward mapping when it comes to the content knowledge or the literacy skills, the foundational skills or the strategies, comprehension strategies, things like that. But we're not looking at what is right there saying this is the language demand. So in order to show what I know about colonial times and to read that text and to engage in talking about characters and citing evidence, there is a lot of language demand there. And so we need to bring that into our planning and say, how do we find it? What language do they need? And I have this picture of, watering the tree. So this analogy is thinking of the student as the tree. And our content teacher has the watering can, pouring the knowledge, right? Working on those foundational skills, working on all the different language arts standards, thinking about what they need to know in language arts. And we have other experts, other professionals in the building. Those are the other folks standing around. Maybe one of them is a reading specialist. One of them is the ELD teacher. One might be an interventionist, right? And if we're all taking that same watering can and pouring water on that student, giving the same content to that student, using the same strategies with that student, that's kind of like I said, where if the teacher is saying, can you pre-teach this vocabulary, or can you finish this worksheet, or can you continue to work on the letters and sounds, because we've been doing this for, 6 months of school now and they're still struggling with it. That image in my mind is everyone using the same watering can. Now, those skills and practices and activities are all very, very important, but we are going to get the most growth from our students, right? This is my image that comes to my mind when we're all doing the same thing and feeling like we're getting nowhere, right? We're working hard. but we have to think how to work smarter and kind of shift our minds of what is most important right now for these students. And sometimes that language is just not getting any attention, and so we're not getting anywhere. I want to change the transformation here when we start talking about functional linguistics, is that we have multiple people who are working with this student, and we're all coming at it with different tools. So one person has the watering can, one person has the small shovel, probably has a special name. One has the bigger shovel, one has the little mini rake thing. And so each of us has an expertise that we bring to the table, and we need to have opportunities for all of that expertise to help the student. So I want my ELD teacher to bring the focus of language. I want my reading specialist to bring the focus of what do our students need to develop their literacy skills. I want my grade level teacher to have both the reading background, the curriculum understanding. We're all bringing something and valuing that. So we are giving equal attention to all the pieces that create a successful student instead of overwatering with one piece. And that's really what I see happening in classrooms, is that we're all focused so much on one or two things that we're not hitting the other pieces that are really important to develop that student. Feel free to comment in the chat or say if you are relating to that, if you've seen that, if you kind of get that analogy, feel free, to comment. I can find my mouse. Here we go. All right, so one example of this is in our course, in the program, we cover multiple, it's a 12-week program, so we cover a lot of different ideas when it comes to functional language planning, because language is huge and our students are all over the place in their proficiency. So it is a big task. One piece of the program is this idea of a whole to part lesson sequence. And I pulled this out because this, the whole to part lesson sequence became a goal for 3 of the members of the spring cohort. And so this is something that they latched onto as what would help them and what they needed. And so in our last session together, they were sharing a little bit about what happened. So just to give you a little background, in the program, we go through a lot of different ways to work with language in a functional language SFL approach, whole to part being one of them. These teachers that you're going to hear from, we have coaching sessions where, as part of the program, you get one-on-one coaching sessions with me where you bring your challenge and we brainstorm, you try some things, we get together 2 or 3 times individually, and then we also have the whole group that can collaborate together of teachers cross grade level, cross districts. And this particular pair decided to that there was a group of 3rd graders who were not moving in their language development and they were not moving in their literacy development, and they needed some brainstorming, some solutions. So we talked a lot about it, and here's a few minutes of them sharing how they were applying what was going on in the class.
Amanda and Jen and I have had lengthy conversations about whole to part and where it fits. So could you guys talk to us a little bit about what you're doing, what you're trying, how it's going, and how you're tweaking it as you go?
Sure. Hi, Kelly.
No,
Jen, chime in whenever.
I should have warned you.
We have a group of 5 EML students. They're in 3rd grade. And we have them 4 days a week for a set block that's about 25-30 minutes long. And I call it our advanced hold apart group because our
Oh my goodness.
Sequence is that we take 3 images from the curriculum. We look at really what the essential question is in the curriculum and what vocabulary and what they need to be able to do. I'll kind of use like the story arc questions for this content knowledge. We're trying a little bit, we go a tiny bit ahead of where they're going in the homeroom classes, just so we can really front load some of this vocabulary for the students. So our process is typically on day 1. We review the 3 pictures, we mark up the pictures with what we notice, and then I infuse the essential vocabulary through labeling those pictures and also just in oral language. On day 2, we review what we did the day before and try to use those words in sentences. And then I typically have 2 targeted sentence frames that they orally respond to, sentence frames about those pictures. And then on day 3, we do shared writing. Kelly did a really nice model. He modeled for us one day, Kelly, and really brought it to life. She had the kids pretend like they were explorers and they wrote a letter home. And together they wrote the letter using the vocabulary words, using the content knowledge. And then she chopped up the letter and the kids had to put it back together. And then I kind of took that out for the next 2 days for the kids, cutting up the sentences and then putting them back together. And it really built their content knowledge and their oral language, and their understanding of what was going on throughout the curriculum. And we're using the ELONS scale, the English Learners Oral Narrative Scale, as a rubric to track growth. It looks like this, but you can't see it because I'm all blurry. And every week I do an oral, at the end of the week, they do an oral answering to a question, which is basically like summarizing what they learned that week, just in a targeted question. And then I score it out of 25 and see if they make growth. And most of our students do make growth, but they stay within the band. So we're trying to get them out of the band of the rubric. Like, for example, a beginner is 0 to 10, intermediate 11 to 17, advanced 18 to 21, and advanced high 22 to 25. Most of our students are scoring in that intermediate range. We're trying to get them higher than 17 points on the rubric. Jen, you want to add?
No, I was just gonna say, I think it's been it's this process, I think, even just the planning for it has helped me to have a better understanding of thinking about, I know we've done so many trainings at school about, writing language objectives and thinking about that. And I think sometimes for teachers who are not ELT teachers, it felt very much like you're checking a box. Like I was writing that language objective, but I think going through the process of planning for the whole part, and even like with the planning sheet that you were sharing earlier, Kelly, going through the entire process with the words and what is it that we're going to be asking, what do we want students to be able to say, how is it going to relate back to the curriculum, has for me made it much more clear and being able to make those connections between the language skills and content. So that's been really helpful. Just the planning process, I think, has been a mind shift for me in terms of what the needs of our students has been.
All right, so these are 2, Jen is a reading specialist and Amanda is a primary grade reading teacher. She does the extras and she also works with the full class of first graders. And the wonderful extra part that we had with this particular school is they got a group of teachers, about 7 of them enrolled together. And so because there was such commitment and because I don't live too far away, I said, I'm going to come in and model for you and visit the classrooms with the other people who were in the group. So there's lots of possibilities there. If you have some friends you want to take the course with, it's nice to have people to brainstorm with and plan with. This is typical for our live sessions, where we'll pick out a few people each time to share how they're applying what they're learning in the program and then brainstorm. And, you know, they really kind of take it over and go from there. So you have individual coaching sessions with me, which Amanda was talking about that happened getting ready. And then we also have these group collaborative sessions with everybody in the group. We sometimes break into grade level, lots of different combinations. They were referring to the teaching and learning cycle, which is a major part of systemic functional linguistics. And so we work a lot with this model where we show how to apply the teaching and learning cycle into many different scenarios that you come across, whether it be math, science, social studies, art, music, PE, language arts. We follow a very predictable pattern that is deeply rooted in research. I will send you the research bibliography in a follow-up email tomorrow, if that's something that you like to look into. And so the process Amanda was talking about follows this step-by-step process, and Jen was talking about as well, with planning with the end in mind, and planning not just for the content knowledge, but the language pieces. And we do a lot of that structured practice together. And then they go and they try and they work on it, and then we coach on it, and then they come and share with the group. So everyone is following a very similar planning design that we cover in the first couple sessions. Which came about to be, I'm glad Jen was such a great speaker in sharing what she was learning, because everyone needs to be a functional language expert, because we know our ELD teachers are stretched across multiple grade levels, big caseloads. In this particular case, they only had a part-time ELD teacher, so her time was even more limited with students. And that school really took on the approach of everybody needs to understand how language develops and how we can incorporate it, because we can't rely on a part-time person to handle all of this. So they had grade level teachers, reading specialists. You know, we did a whole workshop with the whole staff. The principal added in some other things because he was excited about it. And we also worked this into Jen then, as the reading specialist, took what she was learning and brought it into the grade level collaborative team meetings, and brought in looking at CKLA curriculum through a language lens into that. So much potential that will help all teachers understand how we can help our students be more successful by helping them express themselves in the content areas. All right, take a breath here. So of these big ideas that we talked about so far, what's resonating with you? Are you really thinking about, you know, your focus on really fine tuning and get a high functioning ELD program? Figuring out how to make that happen anywhere and everywhere in your school, building everyone's capacity. Which of these resonates? You can say 1, 2, 3, or 1, 2, and 3, or. Wendy, exactly, right. And so it just happens that you're from the same district as these teachers, so using the same curriculum. A lot of districts are using CKLA though, and HMH is very similar structure I have found in working with other districts. And right, there's a mandate for co-teaching, a mandate for focusing, a mandate to keep the pace. And what we're doing in that is not training teachers how to co-plan, how to co-teach, who's supposed to be doing what, what's the ELD teacher do here. And so we just have this fuzzy kind of fly by the seat of our pants. We don't know if what we're doing is right or wrong or how to do better. And we've kind of created this big gray cloud that we can break through with some training in functional language planning. I wish I could have every principal as excited as their principal was about learning, because it just makes sense when you get into it. It just makes sense that we need language to be able to do any of that curriculum. And if we don't acknowledge that, then we are missing a huge piece. I just want to pause for a second and say, Ava, I know you logged in a few minutes later. So if you want to introduce yourself in the chat, let us know who you are, where you're from, grade levels, your role, all of that. We can include you more in the conversation. So as we come to the end of our intensive of the programs, our teachers are feeling much more confident in knocking out, right, really targeted, explicit, and aligned lesson plans in record time. So in this co-teaching, they know exactly, like, this is my job, this is my goal, this is how we're going to do this together, right? You find the tricks, the places to look, the focus, and we talk about how to quick know what to pick from that giant buffet of language. All right, welcome, Ava from the Bronx. Ava, what grade level and what language arts curriculum do you use? One of the biggest things I saw happening in this spring cohort was streamlining that co-planning time. I presented the group with some different tools, planning guides, templates, things for them to consider that they went and tried with their co-teachers, and just having a structure and being able to say, these are the most important things I need from you, kindergarten teacher right now, or kindergarten teacher saying, these are the most important things I need from you, language teacher. And we know exactly what we need. We can name it off quickly and we're ready to go and we can move on. Instead of a lot of hemming and hawing and I don't know, and that's so big, right? We can really get narrowed in. Okay, right. So your HMH is going to have a lot of the same as CKLA. And what they're also seeing, as Amanda was kind of alluding to, is a group of third graders who had been very discouraged by third grade of knowing that they're not reading like everyone else. And watching their confidence and excitement build when we just took a different approach. They're still learning foundational skills. They're still learning sounds and letters. They're still learning all the things that everyone else is learning. But in the time that Amanda takes them out, you know, in what could be an intervention block or an accelerator block or an enrichment block, a small group time, and she comes at it from a different approach. And they are really blossoming and gaining confidence. And as she said, her data showing that they are moving, right, on any particular topic. So again, we start June 2nd. We run through August 23rd. In that 30 hours, it's a 30-hour program. For the 30 hours, depending on what is valuable to you in your district, you can just be part of the program for 30 hours and get the certificate that says you were here for 30 hours, or you can just log in and participate as you want. You could also participate and do the application exercises that are in there and get a certificate to turn into your district. You could also get to graduate credits, or for my Maryland teacher, you can get CPD credits as well. So you can kind of think if any of those things would enhance it or, you know, give you even more for your time. You'll get strategies, well, you'll get structure, you'll get coaching, you'll get collaboration, all of these pieces. The live sessions, we had 4 in the spring. I bumped it up to 5 because we just didn't have enough time to talk to each other, right? That was the best part, was really brainstorming together and hearing what other people were doing and getting those aha moments. So we'll have 5 live sessions. If you ever have a schedule conflict or something like that, that you can't be there, we always record and the next day post the recordings in the modules with the asynchronous content. So it follows a pattern of we meet live together the first week, and then you have asynchronous modules that you can log into, and you have some asynchronous content to look at in between. then we'll come back for another live session, then you have more asynchronous content, and it goes back and forth like that over the 12 weeks. You'll have a study guide, you'll have week by week what the topics are and the modules. We have guest presentations. There will be a live presentation from Dr. Ruslana Westerlin, who has just been amazing about supporting this program when she has like lots of people asking her to do things. So I was super excited that she would join us. We have a recorded presentation that Andrea Honingsfeld, if you know her, she's published many books about co-teaching, co-planning, co-assessing. And so she's done some of the asynchronous content for us as well, other specialists and contributors. So lots of smart people to hear from through. As I said, you get at least 2 coaching sessions with me, as long as there's time on my calendar. If you want more, we can fit in more. It depends on how much you want to brainstorm, talk about things. One of the other teachers doing Hold Apart, I think we probably met 5 times. I met with Jen and Amanda, I don't know, more than that. So here are our published authors who are part of the program. As I said, lots of planning tools, guidelines, structures, documents, things that you can use to help narrow down your language focus. As a member of the intensive, you also get full access to our teachers archive. The teachers archive is like that filing cabinet, electronic filing cabinet of tons, probably 100 hours or more of past English Learner Portal content, past webinars, pieces of courses we've offered, resources we've gathered, model lessons. There's a section in there that has curriculum, project-based learning curriculum for language development in there that you can use as a model. Lots and lots of stuff, so you get a year access there. These are some of the curriculum units that are in there. You will get access to these Becoming a Meteorologist, Money, 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 and Healthy Bites literacy supplements. They're Hold Apart lesson sequences that follow the teaching and learning cycle that you'll learn about in the class. So more to help you. It takes, I would say, 2 to 3 hours a week to really give the attention it needs. Of course, we give tons of resources, so you could spend a lot more time if you wanted to, but you could keep up and keep pace and earn your credits for about 2 to 3 hours a week. I have a couple quotes for you. So happy I had the opportunity to take the class. I became an English language development teacher 4 years ago. I've had training through my county, but this class really showed me how to come into a lesson as a language teacher and not another classroom teacher. That's been the mindset shift we were talking about. It has taught me ways of focusing on my students working through their language, right? This was an MCPS teacher, by the way. Functional language planning has been a fabulous learning experience. The readings and application ideas are useful right away, and the opportunity to engage with Kelly, Dr. Westerlin, and fellow educators has been informative and rewarding. And we have one more. Dr. Westerlin's expertise with Kelly's practical applications, highly relevant to my instructional planning. Help me better identify and address the language demands in my district's curriculum. And I feel like there are many of us who are right there right now that the demands are great. And how do we sort through and know what to do day to day? All right, let me answer your questions. What questions do you have about systemic functional linguistics, functional language planning, the intensive? What questions do you have?
Oops. Hi, Kelly. It's Wendy here. And
Hi.
I actually watched this video earlier. I think you had one posted that where it was recorded as well. If I were to register for this course, can you just tell me what the payment is up front or how that works with Montgomery County in your experience?
Sure. So there's a couple options when it comes to payment. The program itself is $795, and that's all the pieces that I just explained to you. There is a 4 payment option that's broken down. I think it's something like $200 a month for 4 months, that you can also do. If you want to get the 2 graduate credits with that, then there's an extra $156 added on to it that goes to UMass Global to register your credits and issue you a official transcript from the university. So there's a couple different options there when you enroll. When it comes to district guidelines, I encourage you to check with your district because everyone's a little different. I know we have had people, Wendy, from your county who have used tuition reimbursement, but I know they're very particular about exactly how you do that. So you want to make sure you check with them first of how they want you to pay, how they want you to handle it so that you later don't find out there was a step they wanted. We can work with you with that. You know, if you're from somewhere else, from New York or from other places, check with your district about tuition reimbursement. If you need a different kind of payment program or something like that, just send me an email or get a spot on my calendar and let me know. We can always be flexible and work something out. We have teachers in the spring who put it on Donors Choose, you know, that place where people can donate for what teachers want, and they had their tuition paid through Donors Choose. Jen and Amanda's school and another school in the district were paid for through a grant that the district had. So check your principal, check your Title I, Title III, other grant offices to see, Title II offices to see maybe there's some grant funding that can help supplement you. These are some of the different things I've heard from teachers who are either already finished or who are signing up. If you want a chance to talk more one-on-one about it, once you think about it, or if you have a supervisor or someone who wants to know more about it, Calendly.com link I put in the chat. Let me fix that. The Calendly, I cannot type and talk at the same time. So 1 second, Calendly.com/English Learner Portal. If you go to calendly.com/English Learner Portal, you'll see my calendar, grab a spot. We'll get on Zoom and chat. My email, info@EnglishLearnerPortal.com. You can send me an email and we can get together and talk or answer your questions for you. Any other questions? All right, well, we have been recording, so let me pause that